Hi, folks, and welcome to Original Firefighter. Original Firefighter is a lifestyle brand inspired by the American Fire Service. From gear for your off days to this podcast, we celebrate the fire service loud and proud every day. Remember, for every purchase you make at Original Firefighter, we give back 5% through our 5-Alarm Give Back program, supporting mental health and wellness for all firefighters. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, and be sure to check out originalfirefighter.com today. Let's get into the show. Hey folks, welcome to the show. This is Original Firefighter. I am your host, Will Pederson, and I do have a great show today for you. This is going to be one that I'm going to enjoy very much because in the studio I have two of my previous partners from the Rockford Fire Department. I retired as a district chief, and I have two other retired district chiefs in here. There's a combined yearage of 93 years of fire service experience in the room right now. Which I think makes us a scene out of Jurassic Park. I just have to figure out which one of you is the T-Rex and which one's the Velociraptor. I'm going to figure that out. But let's get right into it. With me today, I've got Marc Wortman, a 32-year veteran of the Rockford Fire Department, and I've got Charles Barnes on my right, a 33-year veteran of the Rockford Fire Department. And so we're going to be pretty heavy into our local fire department establishment throughout this episode. Guys, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, great to see you guys. When we retire, it does feel like you sort of lose. You don't lose track, but the rope gets really far extended. You're still on the line, but the rope is out there really far. And then when you bring it back in, this is fun. This is great. So thanks for being here, guys. We do have a couple rules on the Original Firefighter Podcast. We always offer bourbon. It's on our table for you. Today is Heaven Hill. It comes from Bardstown, Kentucky. But if you're good with the coffee, if you're good with the water, we're just going to jump right into it.
Sounds good.
Guys, what got you into the fire service? Let's go with one of you, just whoever. Jump off. What got you in the fire service?
Well, little town I'm from, Stillman Valley, south of here. My dad was on the fire department when I was a young kid. Basically, he was like a traffic control. And that's back when the first guy at the station hits the button and the siren goes off, so it lets everybody know in the town to show up. And I would ride with him when I was little. And then later on, a little bit later, he was a radio dispatcher for Stillman Fire Department. And that was probably when I was in freshman in high school. Mm-hmm. Started to go down the station with him, and it just hit. This is I really got involved at the local level. I started my EMT class when I was a junior in high school, going to night class and taking some medical terminology classes through Rock Valley College. So that got me started, and I was hooked. It was something I really liked. I enjoyed. I'd go down and just sit at the fire station and wait for a call to come in, and there's not that many in Stillman Valley, to be honest with you. So that's really how I got started, and then progressed up through. I got hired at the Rockford Airport back in the early 80s as a public safety officer, which was fire and police both. So I went to PTI down at University of Illinois. It was 6 weeks back then. I don't know what it is now. It's 16, 20, I don't know.
Come out of there as like an FBI agent,
But so the good part about that is it wasn't much action as far as firefighting because we were just inside the fence line at the airport and aircraft only. But they were a big part of the state fire marshals training program. Sure. So I got to be a firefighter back then, firefighter 1, 2, 3, airport firefighter, instructor 1, which really helped me when I got on Rockford. 7 years later, I finally got on Rockford, tested 3 times before I got on, tested some other cities.
Wow.
You're on that waiting list, just waiting for that call. And finally, the dream came through. I got on Rockford, and when I was a little bit later, I was 28 years old when I came on. And then the career progressed from there.
Yeah, I mean, man, you did a lot in that. When you finally got the hook that you wanted to be a firefighter, but you did so much in between that time to when you got on Rockford. What you said, 28 years? You were 28 years old when you got on?
Yeah, when I got on Rockford.
Yeah, so about what age were you when the hook was set?
It was like 16, 17.
Man. Yeah.
Then I started taking classes at Rock Valley and got my associate's degree through Rock Valley. And it was just something I enjoyed. I enjoyed helping a small community. I helped the large community in Rockford. It was just ended up being a great career.
That's great. Great. What about you, Charles?
Mine was like the exact opposite of that.
Which is great because our listeners and viewers, like, and you know, this goes everywhere. So like, we have so many listeners and viewers that some of them are on the job already, and some are trying to figure out how do I get on, you know, to a fire department, or they're just trying to figure out like, is this a good fit for me? And like what you just described, Marc, is, you know, you knew right away, and I was sort of the same way. I came, you know, from my small little town in Wisconsin, and all I really wanted to do was like just hang around.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like it didn't even matter if I was going on the call. I just wanted to be around the firehouse. So, but then we have, you know, go ahead, you know, with your background.
You know, I went to school in the 70s, and you got out and the economy wasn't all that great. And I had looked toward the military, but the military wasn't really looking good because they were like kicking people out, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
And so, you know, didn't have the means to go to college. So I just had a job. You know, I was working in kind of a construction type of a job, traveling around a little bit, and realized that, you know, it's like, there's no future in this. It's okay for now, but there's no real future. And a buddy of mine is on Rockford Fire, Tony Vitale, and he's like, you got to get in the fire department. You got to get in the fire department. And I'm like, no, I really don't want to stick around Rockford. I want to just, you know, kind of get out of here and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You have to kind of thing, right? So, you know, I was kind of looking around, doing something. Okay, fine, I'll sign up, take the test. So I take the test. And back then, they had lost home rule. And that meant that they couldn't get governance by themselves. They had to go under different rules. And so they just suspended the testing. So it was literally a year between the time I took the first written test and the time I took the final, you know, psychological test.
Yeah.
So they just didn't do it. Then the list came out, and my buddy keeps telling me, yeah, hey, you're there. They're going to hire there. And I'm like, I don't really care. It doesn't make any difference to me. I'm just kind of sitting out there, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And ended up, you know, they hired like 3 groups off the list. And I was in the last group that got hired off the list. So it was almost 3 years from the time I took the first test till the time I got the job. And walked in there, and day one, first couple hours, it was like, yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Really?
Yeah. It was just like, boom, like
That's
that.
cool.
You know?
Yeah.
And it was just like, you know, this is what my personality is. This is what I enjoy. This is where I'm supposed to be. And so that was just it.
Did the construction background that you had serve its purpose for the job that you were about to take?
You know, it did. Back then, you know, most of the guys that were out of the trades.
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
there was a few legacy.
We're going to hit
people.
on that quite a bit, I think, in this episode.
There was a few legacy people where people, you know, like Marc, where it was like their family was involved and they knew about it. There was a few that were very, very few that were kind of like that political appointee, because again, I mean, we're talking the early 80s, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And things were different than my first.
I know we're both, you know, there's a little age
first,
difference here, but that's good because I love the perspective that you guys are going to bring to this show today.
Yeah, my first house mortgage was like 12.5% interest.
Yeah,
kind of stuff, you know?
Holy cow.
You know, so it was like the whole world was different back then,
Yeah.
you know, and Rockford was different. We had lost so much manufacturing to the Sun Belt, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so the whole town was just changing its environment.
Yeah.
And so anyway, you know, when we got on, you know, it's like, this is kind of like a different position, a different thing. So the guys that were there, a lot of them were the trades, and they just fell there because the trades were getting slow. As a matter of fact, one of the guys I came on with, he was a union plumber and had a great job, but there was no security in it. So he came on and said, I'm just going to do this because there's security in it, kind of thing.
There's stability, right?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
when you get in that 24-48 routine and you're like, I can do this for how long?
Yeah, and then them guys in the trades can still do their stuff on their days off.
Sure, of
you know?
course.
A lot of guys had lost their pensions because the town, the companies had moved out of town and stuff like that, you know. So, but then other guys, they were just like, yeah, I love it here. He says, you know, just go down and look at the guys working at the foundry and you'll see why I'm here, you know, kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but the trades there were people who wanted to solve problems. You know? It's like, give me the tools, give me a team, and I'll go fix a problem. And that's the environment. That's what it was, you know. It was like, you know, we'll fix it. We'll get it done. And the trades, all those guys, they just think mechanically and teamwork and getting the job done. And, you know, they understand that there's a drive, there's a cost to getting it done. It's not we want to do it today because it's nice outside, you know, kind of thing. And so that commitment was huge for those guys.
Well, and it's interesting, you know, like the commitment part of it. And you had referenced that you thought about military there for a moment as well. I think I've said this on other shows where I think everybody that I meet, whether they're a firefighter, a cop, an EMT, you know, like there was a moment that they either did serve or they were like, I was almost right there to serve, and then I got hired by a fire department or a police department. But, you know, like the time that you guys are coming onto the department, you know, you're also dealing with a lot of those guys that had gone into the military. They'd actually been in, they'd been in Vietnam.
Absolutely.
The majority of them were from Nam. I mean, a high number numb and it was like Charles says, a different time back then.
Yeah.
Way different.
Well, I'll give you a little example.
Yeah, go ahead.
When I was going through so I had this job and I knew it was kind of not going anywhere. So I started going to Rock Valley College, and my goal was I'm going to go be an engineer, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I was literally taking college courses when I went through my oral interview, and one of the fire commissioners said, "Hey, you know what?" He says, "You're going to college right now." He says, "Would you get this job? What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I guess I'm going to quit college and take this job." He says, "That's the right answer." He said, "This isn't a college job. This is a high school job."
Oh, yeah.
Because that was the environment back then. It's like we need people that are, strong enough to do the job.
Oh, yeah.
And they're smart enough to do the job, but dumb enough not to ask why, kind of thing.
I'm always interested, when we're doing these shows and we'll get feedback from listeners and viewers. And I would love to see some people come back and say, nowadays, the requirements are this, and the list will just be so long, or so many people are out there actually getting a 4-year degree.
Yeah.
I did the same thing, the same walk of life. I think that we all, the crawl, walk, run, and the crawl is that you guys are coming out of either the trades or, you have your young passion that you knew you wanted to be a firefighter. I knew that too. I came from a small farming community. So guess what? I was doing a lot of, those types of activities, farming, helping other farmers,
sure.
Baling hay. And, so work was fun. That was I was never afraid of being dirty and getting into the mix. And not to disparage anybody that's not coming from that walk of life. I'm saying that the exposure is just not there.
It's just different.
Yeah.
I mean, and the world is different. The world is different. I give you a little example. A buddy of ours from years ago, he was on long before me, and I was talking to him one day, and he was telling me that he kind of ended up at the fire department, didn't really plan on being there. He's a trades guy. And he says, I guess I kind of have to tell you, he says, I probably have some, tickets like from drag racing and stuff like this and all that kind of stuff in my past. And again, fire commissioner says to him, don't worry about it. He says, you guys have to be a little nuts to get on here anyway. It'll be fine. But you can imagine today, if somebody's got some kind of reckless stuff in their past, if you have some kind of, law, or if you've interacted with the law in negative ways, you're probably not going to be high up on that list.
It hits you. Yeah, it hurts you a little bit different.
So it's a very different environment, just the thought process.
But, kind of hitting on that, though, and maybe it's going to come around the other way just because of the lack of applicants nowadays.
I was about to go there.
Retention and recruitment is as you've talked before about it, is tough, and maybe they got to go back a little bit and revisit, the requirements.
Well, and people, whether you're young or, certainly you're not getting on this job in your elder years, your older years. You have to come on this department or any department. You have to get into this career at a younger age. You don't have to be absolutely young, like, 20, 21, 22. But you came on, you said 28 years old.
Yeah.
And by the standard, people would probably say, that's
old.
That's a little bit old. It's a little bit out there, right? I mean, we know people that, they came on at like 34 and a half or 35 years old.
A couple of those in my class.
Yeah, right? And everyone's eyes get real like, holy cow, how are you going to hang,
We had one guy that came on, he was 40 because they had this little gap in there. They allowed anybody to come on regardless of age. He had finished one career and was starting this one. Yeah.
So, obviously we're just basically saying it's a young person's job. It is. And now you look at where we're at with the call volume, just crazy. Come on. That I've stood on this platform for a while. Every year, 3% up. It doesn't go the other way.
Right.
I've challenged people and said, show me a year where the call volume went down. Not when the fires went down, not when the EMS, I'm just saying overall, show me the year that the call volume went down.
And that's not locally, that's nationally.
It's national.
It's everywhere.
That's 100% nationally. Yeah, that's not, we're not unique.
No.
So, so now you have individuals that are weighing this decision of, is this the career for me? Do I want to have this type of, again, you can't get away from it. And there's so many things I've learned from both of you, and just you've always called it what it is. It's like, it's a blue collar job. You can't pretend.
Decades ago, I heard stories. The way you got in the fire department was your precinct committeeman was the one who said, okay, this guy should go on. That was long before. I'm talking 100
nepotism
years ago kind of stuff. Well, no, but it was like, because you were just a community servant. It was a civil service job. It wasn't anything else. It's like, go try and go do your best. Guys would talk about, they go into the, their academy was here. here's a rope, start tying some knots. Okay, you're on the company, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Those are the stories we heard from the old guys that were on when we came on, that kind of stuff. But when they changed it and gave you points for college degrees, that was a huge game changer. There wasn't even college degrees made for this job.
Yeah.
Now those have all developed, but it's just a different world is all. And it's a very different world. I mean, I've heard you reference it yourself, whether you're talking about the type of fires or the type of community or whatever, everything is different. So.
It is.
And also going back to the early years, them older guys, I mean, they were working one on, one off. And then the pay wasn't that good. So, it's... It almost could take what they could get back
even
then.
when I got on the job, I mean, I was making nothing. I took a pay cut to come on. Everybody in my class took a pay cut. We were making like $16,000 a year to come on.
Yeah.
And everybody took a pay cut to come on. And they all had their own reasons why, kind of stuff. But everybody assumed they're going to work another job or two while they're there.
Yeah.
And now these kids, I don't think hardly any of them have a second job. So it's a different world.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they're all doing podcasts like these.
There you go. They're on their phone at least.
Oh, we're getting paid for this? That's a good deal.
Yeah, they definitely know how to drive a phone. That's for sure. No, guys, I love that we just started right there with this perspective of time and where we were all at when we thought, like, this is the job for me. I think there's like 1.3 million firefighters in America. 70% of them are still, only about 30% are actually full-time.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah. So you still are, you've got the wide, the wider range of the pool are, volunteers, or they are the paid on premise, which is, I've said this in other shows where the standards have changed greatly too. So everything is different, to your point, Charles, is that everything is different, and the requirements and the standards have changed so much and require that even a volunteer or a paid on call or a paid on premise firefighter, they almost have to hold all the same certifications that a full-time career firefighter would have.
Right.
Yeah, they do.
Which is, kind of crazy to think that there's, people out there that are just doing it for the good of their community, out of the goodness of their heart, just to be a part of the brotherhood, sisterhood, that type of thing. So I always think to the volunteers first for some reason. I think it's probably because I came from there.
Me too.
Just like, and so many others that came from the volunteer walk first, and then they moved over to the career. But it's no, surprise that you come from the construction background, and then the people want the stability. And so they see this type of service, and they say, well, there is stability here. So why wouldn't I make the change?
And the other thing with the volunteers, I'm still a trustee for a volunteer department and that sort of thing.
Yeah, hats off to both of you for serving in the communities that you...
And the thing with that is the country moved forward with the liabilities, and they said, okay, we can't just have people out here trying to do the best thing and getting hurt. We got to get the standards up. But there was no money that came with the standards. So these volunteers are out there, like you said, they have to abide by the same rules that the career people do, but they have to do it on a volunteer basis.
Right.
But nobody ever upped the money for them, which, I mean, we're all public servants. It comes from the taxes, but it's still back to, at some point in time, what do you do about that?
Yeah, and the same requirements as far as gear can only last so long.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these volunteer departments have pretty much zero money. I mean, it's limited budget, but they still got to get rid of their helmets in 10 years and their gear and their trucks, and it's tough. Some of them are fighting a real battle there.
Yeah, it's not a surprise when you see some of these departments out there that still have an engine that looks like it came off the Hollywood set of Emergency.
Yeah, exactly.
Our department, and they auctioned an engine a few years ago, or actually I guess it was a tender a few years ago, and the department that came down to get it was from up in northern Wisconsin. They were thrilled to have it. It was one we were getting rid of.
Yeah.
And we're a pretty poor one as well. So yeah, it's a different standard in different places. You'll see that for sure.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you guys was that because you have, well, let me back up. So we have a couple photos here. The first photo is the first fire that I had as a district chief, with you as you were my partner. So I began with you, Marc, first as my first partner, and we had this fire. Can you know where that's at?
Is that the one down on? Well, it's on Market Street.
Yeah, that's the Market Street fire.
That's a big one.
Yeah, so that was right across from the Rue Marché. And that's the one where that's ladder 2 right there in the photo, for front of the photo there. And remember that ladder 2 Great crew. I mean, I still know who was on that company. Great crew. Everything that could go wrong with a truck went wrong with that truck. I mean, I think at the end, like the ladder didn't come out of the bed. They had to, override it, and then they couldn't get water flowing. I mean, the truck was like dying. But the crew did great. All of them did so well.
It's all a good experience for you.
It was. I was definitely thrown in the frying pan.
And here's the thing is, I remember that fire, not because I was there, but Marc talking about it. That was a good experience for Will.
Yeah, it was so good. And I remember the chief of the department.
Yeah, he was there.
He was there. And I remember the transformers blowing up.
In the back.
And he's got this video. It's so good. And I try to illustrate where he's taking video with his phone of the fire, and then the transformers over his shoulder, like they just let off.
Yeah.
And it's boom, boom, boom. And he drops, he's still recording, but because he goes into a running sprint away from, so now all you see is pavement going by, and his feet just, trying to get away. So it was a very good fire. These guys did an excellent job. They actually ended up saving. We lost obviously that center there, but they actually did a great job that was a good fire, showing how other property can be saved.
Right.
You don't have to lose the whole block.
Nope.
And so that was really good to come out of the gate with you on. And then I think I have another photo of just you, Marc, and it's actually you and I again together, but you're in the photo. It's actually your last fire that I had with you before you retired. So that's you there. See you right there on, I think we're on Jackson Street right there.
I don't remember. I remember the fire, but I don't remember where it was at.
Yeah. So that was a good days. And then I got Charles. I got you on your last day before you retired, or the day that you retired. And Charles, you were my partner.
Yep.
And one of the things that I took from Charles was that because there's a ton of safety standards in the fire service now, as there should be. And it's not a disparagement. That's not a knock on it. But you would always say, like, you can't take you can't take all the hazard out of this job. There are going to be risks.
Right.
And that really did resonate with me for a long time, especially as I was a district for 7 years. So I had the fires that I had, and I had the experiences that I had, and I had individuals that did get hurt, and I remember that ringing through my ears every now and then, reminding me that we can practice and train and know our SOPs and know our job as good as we possibly can, and that there's still going to be things that you just can't get away from.
You just got to minimize them and learn from them, so you try to prevent them.
Yeah. What was just curiosity? As you guys were going through your either you were just at a firefighter rank or any rank that you held. What was a tough call that you guys were on, where you were challenged, greatly, more than you were like, holy shit, this is not what I was thinking we were getting into.
Nothing really stands out. I've had some bad calls where some children passed away, and that's tough and stuff. But it's just I think the few Maydays that I've had, luckily it turned out all right. But that's a scary moment and amps things up drastically, and as well prepared as we are in this department, which I think we're outstanding. That's one call you don't want to hear come in, and again, luckily they all turned out all right, and it's the training that we do when a Mayday comes in and the RIT training. If you know me, I was huge on RIT. Some guys can't stand it, and I think it's so important. It's most important job on the fire department, but one or on the scene, but one you hope you never have to use.
Right.
So some of them stand out. That the crews went above and beyond like they usually do, and things turned out good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know that it's always going to be a question of, if the question's asked, what was the toughest call, hardest call, anybody that's any loss of life. I mean, it's the first thing that feeling of a Mayday, and then responding to it and figuring out, are we doing it correctly? Is it organized, or is it chaos? Like, are you making the problem worse?
Did you miss anything?
Did you miss
anything?
All
your training?
Yeah.
Did you hit your points and make sure that you're there? You're going back through your head.
Yeah. What about you? What about you, Charles? Anything?
It's hard to say because, when we were younger, a little bit different. I mean, the workload was so heavy that you just felt like you're swimming the whole time, You didn't understand it maybe as well. I remember an ambulance call. It was a triple shooting. We literally took a patient to the hospital and drove back and got another patient, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, and then that kind of thing where we were driving back from an ambulance call. Well, actually, I was driving the ambulance for the crew that was in the ambulance and came across a big industrial fire, kind of thing. So I stood out there with a portable radio waiting for everybody to get there. That feels like a long time when you're standing there.
You came across it?
Yeah, literally just came across a big dumpster or a big junkyard. And, the whole thing was just burned like, hey, have you heard anything about a call? There's a lot of smoke up here, kind of stuff.
Wow, yeah.
Nobody even called it in. I called it in. My crew was on the ambulance. I was driving them to the hospital. And, and I called it in from the front seat there. They gave me their portable, and I stood out there and waited for everybody to come. It's like you're standing there just watching this fire get bigger and explosions happening, and you're thinking, well, when's everybody going to get here? My engine was only a few blocks away, but they hadn't left the scene yet.
Yeah.
So, but again, not really challenging, just that different perspective. I think probably one that you and I were on, very into my career, there was a water rescue we had, and it had already started to go poorly before we got there. And there was people in the water from another department that was performing a rescue, and we got there, and the first thing I see is a boat that was completely overloaded.
Yes.
Operating, and water was really moving fast, and I was thinking, how many ways can this go wrong?
Yeah. This episode of the Original Firefighter Podcast is sponsored by Castle Contracting. Castle Contracting offers commercial and residential restoration, leading the industry in roofing, residential siding, gutters and downspouts, egress window installation, storm damage assessment and repair, and solar energy, saving you money and time. If you want to be treated like royalty, contact Castle Contracting to schedule a free inspection. Call them at 877-512-4207 or go online and visit castleexteriors.net. That's 877-512-4207 or go online and visit castleexteriors.net. Serving Illinois, Wisconsin, and Kentucky, Castle Contracting has you covered. Your home is your castle. Call Castle Contracting today.
And that's probably one of those things where you're watching it saying, I don't have all the resources I need to get this thing here, and they're not going to be here quick,
Yeah.
And that was probably one of the ones where I was really thinking to myself, this is going to go wrong fast. But it didn't.
You were a diver, and so that gave certain depth and perspective for me, as a young chief. And I always looked at the river as that being actually like possibly the most dangerous thing that we do. So not by volume, because the fires obviously
it's just
outweigh.
An uncontrollable environment,
but it's a very uncontrolled environment. You're trying to bring some control systems to the problem, and so like you referenced like this boat being overloaded, and you realize like if we don't fix that, that's going to become the next thing that we're dealing with. Right. Beyond the rescue of the civilians, and knowing what that takes to really step into some of these situations and say we're not doing that. Stop doing what you're doing right now.
To control the reaction.
And that's what you're getting paid for in the supervisory roles, is to really step up and say, don't do that. Otherwise we're going to be the next victim.
And that's hard. It's hard. These guys want to go. They want to get in there, and whether it's a dive call or a fire or EMS, it doesn't matter, extrication. They want hazmat. They want to get in there and do something, and you got to reel them in. And I was aggressive. I know all you guys. We're all aggressive on the fire scene, and that's the hard part. These guys, you want to turn them loose, but you just can't sometimes.
We had one of the chiefs that I really learned a lot from was Jack Burns, and he was my chief for a long time. We had a lot of big fires together. I was just a new guy. We were on the ambulance at the time, and he let us come to the fires even though we weren't required, Mm-hmm. So we'd stand out there and be his assistant, if you were, and ask a lot of questions, and we all benefited from it because we were getting to hear what he was thinking, because we just wanted to grab a hose and go in, or grab an axe and go break some windows so we can help people out, or whatever the story was. But, as you went through your career, you started hearing those things that he was saying, oh, I get it, and I understand now. And that's really hard to hold people back when they want to go in, because you're the person that's supposed to know better when you're in that command position.
Yeah. I remember a fire I was getting ready to make district chief. You beat me out. You outscored me. It was hot.
We love having those fictitious plaques behind our name. You know, like
It was a 4th
I
of
one-upped
July,
you.
4th of July on West State Street.
Oh, yeah.
Big house, and it was rolling. And
State and Stewart,
and it was hot. And Rebecca and I were inside on the ladder, and we made the 2nd floor, and it was hot. And you pulled us out, and I'm like, man, 5 more minutes. We just had 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes.
You know, and then you get outside and you see what you're looking at.
Yeah.
And that's where all 3 of us were district chiefs. And it's, you know, you see a different side when you're standing outside looking at it compared to being inside.
And they had worked their tail. It was
hot.
95 degrees outside.
Yeah.
And they had beat that door for 20 minutes. This guy had it so locked up. They were trying to get in there, and they went to a different door. It was so
we went
tight,
down through the basement, actually, and made it all the way to the 2nd floor.
Yeah.
But
I always listened. I'm sure you can relate. I always listened to the tone of voice. You know, whoever was inside giving me a report from inside, coming out to me on the radio, and what did they sound like, and take into account that there are some people who just they talk fast, or it's not that they're overexcited. They're just trying to tell you, hey, there's something I need to say, and I want you to get this information. So that's fine, but there's another level. There's another tone level that things go to when things are not going in the right direction, and you'll hear that. I mean, you really hear that coming across the radio.
Right.
And you know your people too.
Exactly. That's the key.
I was on a ladder company. We had gone to a fire, and there was supposed to be some people trapped up above the fire. It was a garage, and those are residents above it. And I went up those stairs, and I was like, oh, I think I forgot to put my hood on. It's getting so hot. And I backed down those stairs, and my hood was on. That's how hot it was. And it was so hot that we couldn't go up those stairs. And again, we pulled everybody out. We got them all out. I'm talking to the chief, and the chief's saying, I understand what you're saying. So when I'm a chief, I'm listening to those guys, and I think on that fire is a good example. I think, Jimmy or one of you guys who were on the stairs, like, yeah, we just couldn't even get up there. It's like, okay, that's telling me something that I can relate back to, that if they can't get up there, I know how hot this thing is.
Yeah.
And so those experiences you had when you were young are those same ones that you bring, when you're not, when you're in command, so you can listen to your guys and say, hey, this is what these people are saying. I got to understand what they're saying, because it might look different where I'm at, but I've been there before. I understand what they're looking at.
I want to get back to something that you said, that the workload was different back then. And I thought that was interesting, because I've said on so many episodes that I think the workload for the entire fire service of today is bananas. And I actually would challenge to say I think that we're actually missing something that's out there that we haven't identified yet. I've got some thoughts and theories, like suggestions of how that could possibly be, but that would probably mean growing some other department, some other, civilian service that would help to take some of the call volume off the plate of the emergency responder. So there you go. But you said, that back then the workload was more. So how do you correlate that? So today I say it's busier.
My position was different. Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
It wasn't that necessarily the workload was busy. I mean, honestly, in some numbers, there are probably some of our ambulance numbers. We were still getting 4,500 calls a year and stuff like that. But the thing is my workload was different, because I was a firefighter, but a low end firefighter. So I just did the task that was in front of me. And as soon as I was done that, I got another task.
Yeah.
So my point is, as a chief, you have a very different workload, because you're looking in a different way. So I'm just doing what I'm told. Somebody's got my back, and I go do what I do.
Yeah, right.
And so that's what I meant by that, was really that my workload in that position was different.
And then back when we came on, we were running 5 on every ladder, 4 on every engine, and that's a huge difference. That extra person is phenomenal.
Could you imagine? Yeah.
Well, then we had 2 ambulances, and we had pride to keep all the privates out. So we would go back to back to back to back without doing reports and everything else.
Oh yeah.
We literally could hang somebody from the ceiling in the ambulance.
Yeah, we had hooks, and you'd hang a gurney there.
Yeah.
Oh.
So if you went to an auto accident and those 3 patients, you were taking them all.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
But now with HIPAA and everything else, it's one-on-one, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we didn't send a chief. Only one chief went to a fire. We didn't have a safety chief,
Yeah.
We didn't have RIT teams back then. The group that I came on with, they were the first group that was required to go through paramedic training. Previous to that, it was all volunteer. And so there was 2 ambulances in town, and that meant there was 4 paramedics for the entire city all day. So 1 on each ambulance in the day and 1 on each ambulance at night. Other than that, everybody else was EMT or Red Cross First Aid.
Yeah.
And so, that aspect, and again, we were still 85% medical, but we actually had an ambulance sat at Station 2. and it was an EMT
Old
basic
tube.
ambulance. Yeah, old tube.
The headquarters now.
Yeah.
And they would respond as an EMT ambulance, not paramedic, and then whichever company that had a paramedic on it would then respond with the paramedic.
Yeah.
That was the third backup ambulance. So the perspective, and one of the differences there is you would be on the scene as a brand new paramedic, and you would say, do this or this, and every officer would say, oh, what do you want me to do? Because you're in charge.
Right. Right.
Where now, everybody's a paramedic.
Yeah.
And you work together all the time, and you probably work together on the ambulances and stuff like this. So it's a different workload in that way,
Let me if you could imagine that you have the ability, right, that you could go into the fire service at the age that you started, but you started like in today's fire service, or you could go back to where you started originally. Which one would you choose?
Go back in a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
You'd go back to when it was the early 80s.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Different world.
Yeah.
It was a great transition. It was just a lot of fun.
What does that
And
say?
I'll
What
be
does that
honest,
say about? Go ahead. Go ahead.
One of my sayings was, especially when I made officer, is, when you sit down with your crew the first day, the first shift, here's what I require from you. Two things. We go home in the morning and we have fun.
Yeah.
Back then we had more fun.
Yeah.
You had the freedom to go out and kind of do what you want and go where you want. And I just think it was
there were some
fun.
negative aspects as far as
Sure.
we weren't as, politically appropriate as things are now. And not everybody was as welcome in the fire service as they are now. And little, things like that we've evolved in positive ways, besides all the equipment and the tech and the technology or the training. But the thing was just being on the job was a fun place to be.
Okay, and I want to go back to that. Okay, what you just said there about that we're in a place where everyone is a part of, or is welcome to be a part of the fire service. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
And back then, what was the struggle in that regard?
Oh,
it was just
generational.
It was just generational. Obviously,
I think at the time that we came on, it wasn't there, but it was the dinosaurs that were still sticking around. You know? And nothing against them, but it was just a different environment. They weren't accustomed to this, and they had things in their heads, and
they weren't ready for women, females in the fire service. Is that what you're?
I don't remember when they exactly came up on with the first female was probably in there right around 80 or so.
Yeah, I think
79
right
or 80.
Yeah.
And I remember a buddy of mine who came on the job several years before me. He said he was in the oral interview, and they actually asked him about that. Do you have any problem working with women? Well, think about that. Now, would you ever think of such a question today?
Right.
So it was just a different period of time.
Yeah.
The old, what was it? Men were made of steel and ladders were made of wood kind of thing. But again, we lived with those guys and we understood where they were coming from. We weren't getting picked on. We weren't getting, minimized or anything like that compared to the groups of people that they were, maybe picking on. So things like that are certainly better. But as far as being a firefighter or a responder in the service, it was a great time to be in there.
And we all know the kitchen tables where everything happens.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in the morning, in the afternoon, before you leave. I mean, nowadays,
everybody's in their own corner.
They're in their own corner. They're on their phone. It's a closer bond. Not that these gals nowadays aren't close as a group and as a crew, but I think it was better back then. It was more bonding. We were together constantly.
Well, okay, so just for perspective, the World Series just ended. Mm-hmm. Dodgers win, Yankees lose. Sorry, New York, but you got how many titles do you have? I mean, so you'll be fine. You'll be fine. But the World Series just ended, and where they go 5 games, I believe.
Yep.
So back in the day that you're referring to, all of those games would have been watched together.
Oh, absolutely.
In the day room.
Yeah.
And it really wouldn't have mattered if you liked baseball or not. Like, you would watch those games.
Just like the senior guy picked what you want.
Yeah.
That's the way it was.
Yeah. And so again, I think that there's a criticism here to be had, is that there is too much, I'm a one-man person. I'm a one-woman person in the firehouse with my phone, and push back on that. But the team aspect, Are they still a team? Yes, I can vouch for the fact that it's still a team as long as if you're working off the same playbook. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you're doing the training, you're going on the calls. If you're making the meals together at the firehouse, that's great. That's all great. How many of those out there? I'm curious, and I'd love to hear some responses. Is that how many fire departments and firehouses are cooking together?
I think one of the things I see is that today there's more intentional team building, more intentional team activity, and back in the day, so to speak, nobody really talked about it. You just did it.
So what you're saying back in the day is that it was more organic, whereas today it's more kind of
it's instructional,
and
intentional, and there's not a bad thing to that because everybody is better or not better. They're on the same page. You would get with a good crew, people you understood, people that worked together, and you'd find your place. And I think today there's a little more of, no, this is how it works, and it's going to be homogenous throughout the department or throughout the service or whatever the story is. Again, not saying that's bad because there's a lot of good aspects to that. It's just different. I
do find it, though, and I'm going to come back to something here. I do find it interesting because I came on in 1996. So what does that separate us?
I came on in 88.
85.
Okay, 85, 88, 96. So I come on in 96, and even I can, I'd like to hang in there with you guys and say, well, my first set of gear was a 3/4 boots. I still had that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They were making firefighters on the fire trucks in Rockford. They were getting rid of. You could still stand up. You weren't riding the tailboard. So let me be clear, we weren't riding the tailboard. But you could still go out the door in an open canopy fire truck and ride to the call standing up.
Correct.
Right.
And they were instituting a policy that they were like, no, and they weren't even at the point of seat belting. They were just saying you had to.
We didn't have seat belts.
Yeah, you had to sit in the cab.
We were the first group. My class was the first group that was issued bunker boot or bunker pants. Okay.
Yeah.
Previous to that, if they wanted them, they had to buy them themselves.
Correct.
Yeah.
They only had 3/4, and we were the first group that didn't get issued 3/4 boots. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that was in 85 when I came on. So my group would have came on a couple of years before that. So they'd been doing it for a couple of years. There was still capability of riding the tailboard. In fact, I rode the tailboard a couple of times because we had too many people on the truck. It was a weird situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we actually had a ladder that didn't have a jump seat. And so you literally rode on the side of the
strapped.
Yeah, you had
a
strap, and you rode on the side of the
wow.
Of the trailer.
Yeah.
You could put your foot out and touch the car next to you.
There was no jump seat in it.
You gotta love when an old photo pops up. If you're on social media or you just come or one of our fire buffs that would send out a photo every now and then and be like, look at that. And it doesn't even have to be a black and white. I mean, it's going to be a faded photo, color photo.
No, that's what I say. This is in 85. There wasn't a single enclosed cab.
There's no cab on it. If you're out in the rain, the officer and the driver is pouring down rain or snow.
Yeah, in that truck, there wasn't even a roof on it. It was a convertible. Yeah.
Oh.
But then they transitioned, and they remember the first enclosed rear cab that they had was just a steel box they put on it. They said they got it from the railroad. They had put it on their truck. And you couldn't get your knees in there. You couldn't hardly sit down in there. You couldn't put your tank on worth a darn, kind of stuff. It's like, how do we get in this thing, kind of stuff. You couldn't stand up by any means,
Yeah.
And so it's, transitioned to where we are now,
So what I want to come back to is that, so I'd asked you guys, which one would you pick? And, and I was putting myself into the mix there at the end and saying, I would also go back. That's the thing, is that so all three of us would say we would go back to the way it was before. Mm-hmm. And we're using air quotes because you've already pointed out that there are things that are up today that are the better way.
Technology, number one.
Technology,
the
right.
Equipment we're using.
The equipment's gotten much better. The technology is better. Getting on the same page, having standard operating procedures, making sure that we all understand the plan. That is by and far much better. It is interesting, though. I mean, we're a small, focus group that's saying, well, we would all go back to then. So what is it about today?
Well, I don't know that I would go back to then as much as if I had a choice. I really thought my career path or my career period was a great time.
Yes.
But compared to today, whether you're talking about the safety aspects, whether you're talking about the tools, the technology, I wouldn't want the fire service to actually go back.
When we look back at we have people that make comments and they want to, express their thoughts and opinions about things we talk about, which we invite that, of course. Why do something like this and have a show that's, dedicated to the American Fire Service and say, what do you guys think? And we do see that there's this element of communication out there that is negative. It's negative. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they're not having they're not talking in the vein and the fun that we're expressing and saying, back in the day, I could do this and that, and it was fun, and I could, you're kind of saying I was able, or at least I'm saying it so that I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm saying there was things that we could do and get away with and not be, feet to the fire for doing fill in the blank.
Right.
Some things absolutely are inappropriate. Okay, we'll make that clear. There are definitely, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Right. But the fun of it, I think there is a loss that's happening. There's a fun of the fire.
It was an environmental fun. Yeah.
How do we get it back?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a tough thing. I mean, everything's changed. Yeah. It's just things just aren't the same. It's easy to say that, and I can go to some specifics. I don't want to do it here, to be honest with you.
That's fine.
I don't want to piss off some people, but we all got our different management styles, and we all got our different views on things. And I don't know. And again, the workload, as far as call volume, is out of sight.
That's what we're hearing that a lot.
That's a big part of that.
These guys don't get a break. Right. They really don't. And when they do get a break, I think I'm like Charles, and you go take a nap. Yeah. I mean, you're up all night, and it gets to be a safety thing at night.
And I'm going to be honest. I mean, I am, kind of trying to, sort of push a little bit where I know that also one of the things that you guys both do today is that you serve as trustees. And we'll just leave it at that, because you're in one location, a community, and you're in another, but you're serving, you guys know what you know in the fire service, and then you still decided, hey, I still have something else to give. So now you guys are the trustees in your community for the fire departments, right?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. So who will listen to this? I call it what it is. It's an honest, it's a community complaint. We can't continue to ignore that. Well, the guys and the girls and doing the work, doing the responding and doing the training and getting all these certifications and getting up to speed and getting on the same playbook and understanding the whole organization and knowing what the role and responsibilities are, but they're still saying, we can't take it.
Oh, they can't take the volume?
The volume, the workload.
Well, and that's exactly it. The volume back when we were doing this, there was little differences in a lot of ways. But I'll give you an example, is you were always together as this team, right?
Yeah.
So you go to this fire and you work your butts off. You come back, you get all ready to go, you get food ready, you're doing your thing, you do a little after action, thing, and you sit down and play cards. How many people are sitting down and playing cards in the station these days? Right. They don't even have time. And they're so separated because that ambulance leaves the door in the morning and doesn't come back until the end of their time.
Yes.
And so those people are excluded from everything that happened during that day. So there's a very different period of time or a very different environment in that way. And I honestly think, and I don't mean to waffle on what you think I was saying, but I honestly think that in today's environment, the training is so good, the concept of teamwork is good, the acceptance of other people is good. And I think that these people, our generation that's responders today, I think they're really I think they're in a spot that they are having fun and they're enjoying it and they understand the aspects of it. So I don't think that they would necessarily say, I want to go back to where we were at, but we just experienced it in a different way.
Yeah. And this is, I want to just, make sure.
And that's not to be PC. It's just that when I see them, they look like they're having a great time and they seem they have a great relationship with each other, the similar relationship that we had. But instead of the senior guy picks the TV show, they say, hey, what do you guys want to watch tonight? So it's just a different.
So there's more, there's more democracy inside the firehouse than there was before.
I think they have it. The last crew I worked with, I think that they had everything that we might have had when we came on. It was just different,
Yeah. I sometimes I myself will go down a rabbit hole and just overanalyze the word different because it's like, I get that it's different. I'm just trying to figure out if it's different in a good way.
Right.
And then
they go and work out in the workout room together, and we went and played basketball. that kind of stuff.
Oh, sure.
That's the type of thing I'm talking about.
Different priorities and different,
And just a different thing, same thing, video games. They play video games at the station. We didn't even have video games to play at the station, kind of stuff. But they enjoy it.
Did you have a TV?
No remote control.
No remote.
Yeah, there you go. That's true.
That's why it was always on WGN, right?
The new guy had to go switch channels, and a lot of this starts, I think a lot of it starts at the academy, I mean, when you got instructors out there that are positive and they're not bitching because of their time on the ambulance, that reflects.
That's the big thing I see.
They start out the academy and you got a group of guys that are instructing and that are really positive for the job and speak highly of it and still love it and like it. And it shows. You can pick up, somebody's attitude toward the job. I think that sets a new kid off on the right path.
Yeah, I keep coming back to this in this segment where the correlation that I'm having with you guys is that the yesteryears were fun and great. Mm-hmm. Today's environment in the fire service is different. It's better in some ways. The feeling that when you start to put in elements of mental health and awareness, which this show is, well, the whole entire brand of our company is based on what can we do to help firefighters and their families with mental health concerns. Mm-hmm. And you probably know the same statistics that I do, which is firefighters that are taking their own lives. And that's it's a reality. It's taken over the line of duty death number, which, we're the whole industry going back to the 80s and then the 90s for me, 80s for you guys, the 90s for me. If you look at the standards and the changes of the fire service, all of that was driven by the line of duty death numbers to bring those down. Hmm. Well, we've been doing that, right? It's been going in the right direction. Yes. And then all of a sudden you turn the page and you go, wait a minute, what's that number? Why is that number going up? I don't know. I can't see something there that is correlating to why this really bad thing is happening.
Yeah. I'm happy, I didn't get a free hat from you, so I'm wearing a fire department coffee hat here.
We're going to plug them. That's okay. That's good.
I happen to sit on the board for the foundation for fire department coffee, mm-hmm. and their goal is similar to yours. Yeah. The foundation part of it is giving back to sick and injured firefighters, first responders. Yep. And then the sad trend is, at first it was physical injuries. Now it's more mental injuries and that side of it that firefighters and departments are asking for help in that aspect. And that's where you're leading, I believe.
Yes, it is.
That trend. And it's sad to see, I don't know what the answer is, but shows like this and fire department coffee and just being aware of it and getting it out there. And number one is, there's other foundations too, locally and nationally, is to get help, call for help. Everybody, we're all brothers here, and any of us, is a phone call away. And if you got a problem, call somebody.
I think the other part of it is we talk about the old days and things were different. And one of the things that was different was I don't think that we paid the kind of attention. I know we didn't pay the kind of attention to this sort of thing, but in turn, suck it up, kid, you'll be okay, ignore it. And that didn't mean there wasn't mental health issues going on. And well as there probably wasn't the same statistical information as we have now.
Right.
Correct.
I personally, one of my partners and one of my crew members, both took their lives while I was on the job, kind of thing. And that's a medium-sized department, a sort of a small environment. So that number is probably a lot higher than we realized at the time.
You had that?
Yeah. Yeah, one of my partner in the ambulance took his own life, and then also one of my crew members, when I was a lieutenant, took his own life. And and the thing is both of them were off the job and everything that goes along with it. And again, at the time, I don't know that was attributed to the job, and I don't know that it should have been. I don't know the details. I certainly don't have the understanding of what was going on with those situations. Yeah. But the point of it is today they're looking at that and saying, wait, this is something to pay attention to. I don't know what was getting any attention back then, Yeah. So.
No, and there is an asterisk, in that number that says, we don't know, the National Fallen Firefighter Foundation doesn't know exactly when that trend began because we didn't know the reporting system, it actually wasn't there. Something around, 2016, 2017 was when they started really seeing there's this trend happening. And I think by the time that it was the year 2019, the number of firefighter suicides overtook the number of line of duty deaths.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, that's a huge part of our platform at Original Firefighter is the mental component.
Right.
I mean, we don't want to see any firefighter injured for any reason. We're just trying to be a part of the conversation. You bring it up, Charles, that there are all kinds of reasons that people go into a reduced mental state that is, capable of, dealing with just everyday life. We understand that.
And not only on the job, it's in their daily life at home. People have problems at homes, and they bring it to the station. And sometimes that's a tough place to bring your problems. Other times it's a good place to sound it out, talk about it to your brothers and sisters. But, things at home, people don't know what goes on behind the scenes too.
No. And we're really good about keeping that stuff under wrap. I mean,
Well, you guys have all been through the assessment center. And what's the classic question in the assessment center? Well, this guy's performance is dropping off.
Is there something going on at home?
And the first thing I say is, there's something going on at home.
Yep.
And people have lives besides the fire department.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we don't remember it. I'm just saying that, that's probably a big portion of this.
It is. And I think a big part of a firefighter and a paramedic and police officers too, dispatchers, we're all doing, we're sort of all on this level playing field together. It's like we're all trying to cover certain bases, right?
Yeah.
And but all of these individuals are doing such a great job of pushing down the everyday things that they, that we all get consumed by, so that they can do their job for the public. So that is the firefighters and the paramedics and the police officers, the dispatchers that are taking the call, responding to the call, good or bad, or, however that last call went, you have to put on, kind of this outer shell so that you can go to the next call. And it's like, we don't ever really shed that outer shell. We're always sort of in that protected bubble. And then we do that in our private lives too.
I'm glad you brought up dispatchers too, because as Charles knows, when I started on the fire department, there wasn't an academy class yet, so I got assigned to the alarm office before 911. So we'd take the calls directly, back before 911. And them dispatchers, it's tough on them, and when I made chief, and even as an officer, if I had a bad call, I would call down there and say, how's everybody doing? First of all, you did a good job. There's avenues that you call me, I'll come down and talk to you. There's avenues to talk to. Sometimes we forget about them. It's tough.
They don't always feel like the team.
Yeah, listening over the phone and hearing people scream in the background and trying to give them CPR instructions and stuff. It's tough on them. And now I think we include them in everything, which is good. I
won't go. We do a very good job here of not talking about every single call to a degree where you can kind of put names together and things of that nature. I just know of a particular call that I was involved in where the dispatcher actually heard the attack happen in the back, and it's like, oh my goodness. I mean, it was bad enough when we got there to see what we saw, but to be on the line and hear it play out in real time. I don't know that I would.
They don't always get that same closure that the responders do either.
Right.
Because the responders have come to that scene and made some kind of sense out of that chaos and moved it to a different location.
Yes.
And so that sort of thing.
Which is the closure.
And if you don't, refer that back to these dispatchers to give them a little bit of follow-up, tell them, like Marc said, hey, you guys did a great job. Do you have any questions about what happened? They want to know what the scene is. I know dispatchers that would get off work at shift change and drive by the fire to see what it was like because they wouldn't see it.
Right.
And so they aren't always... that's a really tough position to be in.
Well, we never included them in a critique back then either.
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's post-incident review, which Will had more than anybody I know of. But they're included, and that's a very
really good at those.
Yeah, that's a very important part to include them in that.
Yeah, the post-incident review, and then even to go even further, we ended up with several incidents there that towards the end of my last few years in the department where we were getting into critical incident stress debriefing, but we were, even before we even got into that, we were doing the kind of the decompressing hour, and just evaluating, is it good for you to stay at work or should you, and it's a tough call.
And I think that's come a long ways because I go back to the first CISD that I ever was involved with was one of our firefighters. He had took his own life off the job, and so they thought, okay, we're going to bring somebody in. Well, they brought somebody in from the outside. The firefighters are all sitting there going, well, whenever this thing's over, we'll just deal with it, kind of stuff.
Oh yeah,
and it was just so ineffective for what we were trying to. Well, we weren't trying to do anything. We were just handling things the way we handle things. We were all friends, and we did things off duty together and all that kind of stuff. So it was a very different environment. I think that through the years, as you're mentioning here, that it started to get a better understanding of how we can process this and how firefighters can get that kind of help versus just being an annoyance and a hindrance. To sit through here and listen to somebody that walked in the door that you've never met before, talking about something that you really don't want to talk about right now. And I think they've learned how to handle things better now. And I think those are all real positive, aspects where, I'm not saying that's back to the good old days weren't always that good.
Right.
I didn't go into fires without a mask, but I know a lot of people that did, that kind of stuff, So, I mean, you got to also look at it in a real light. So,
well, and hopefully, stuff like this, podcast and just having the open conversation, I think goes a long way. We appreciate what Fire Department Coffee is doing. We appreciate what other companies are doing, and groups of people, associations, psychologists and psychiatrists that come together to figure out the best program. We're a tough nut to crack.
Yeah.
So if you're going to bring a program to the fire service, man, you better have vetted it really good, because we're going to figure out every way we can to break it.
Right. Exactly. That's what we do.
So I want to move to something, because beyond the fire service, you guys both represent something I think is interesting, is that you served for many years as a dispatcher for Rockford Memorial Hospital.
21 years.
21 years as a dispatcher up at
ROCCOM.
Yep, ROCCOM.
And we dispatched the REACT crew, which Charles was part of.
Yep.
Trauma team. We took all the inbound ambulance reports. Quite a few volunteer fire departments before I left. So
yeah. So if you haven't put things together, this is what I think is fascinating about you guys, is you bring so much to the table. I didn't know that you were in PTI. So you were basically a peace officer at the Rockford Airport.
Yeah, I was deputized through the Winnebago County, but
out at the airport. So deputized, and then you've got the fire service, you've got dispatching for 21 years. It just so happens that you dispatched for ROCCOM, which was the same dispatching agency for the REACT helicopter that you, Charles, flew for.
Yep.
And we got a lot of
Charles and I go back a long way.
We're always kind of like parallel.
You guys saw each other a lot.
Exactly. So,
whether you were passing each other in the firehouse or passing each other in the hallways of the hospital, you were always seeing one another.
Oh
yeah. You both did something quite different than the average firefighter out there that's got the side job. But you guys, you went down dispatching. You got into flight. What was the drive there? Just the opportunity?
I'm not adrenaline junkie like you are. I'm not going to jump out of a plane or go climb a mountain, but I like the action. I also at the same time was security up at McChesney Park Mall. And
there's a mall there?
Well, there was.
Yeah.
I just like the action, and now, being a trustee in Stillman, I still see that part of it a little bit, but I know you miss it. And I know, it's just, I like being part of that I don't know, part of doing something and being active.
Something that I think is interesting is that the transition of EMS coming in underneath the fire service, which, if you actually go back historically, you think that, like, how did it get to be that way? But it actually really did make sense, where you basically had the first ambulance service came out of Cincinnati, Ohio. And then I think 4 years later, New York City added its first, or I think it was it New York City or Philadelphia? So actually Cincinnati was the first to introduce a civilian ambulance. And then New York City followed 4 years later. They brought, this is interesting, they would bring a 1 quart of emergency brandy for patients. Well, today it's bourbon, but back in the day,
whatever works.
In the 1800s, it was a bourbon or a brandy, so they would bring brandy for the patients. But then it was Philadelphia in 1951 that brought basic first aid, and then in 1969, Miami Fire Department started the first paramedic program in the country. So, continue on, you end up being, what's your guys' state ID numbers? Do you know? Is it low?
Oh, mine was 85, or no, locally it was 85. I don't know what it was.
Your paramedic license.
What they used to do was, it was kind of your paramedic region. And at the time, so I'm going to you can fill in where you want to here, but basically before the Rockford Fire Department took over, ambulance service.
Yeah.
The police department had white cars, okay? And a white car was basically a van that had a stretcher in the back.
Yeah.
And they would just throw people in there and take them to the hospital. And there was a couple of private ambulances, like Swinson, Genders Graham, I think Metro finally came in there at some point. I'm not sure exactly the timing of everything. But it was around the mid-70s, like 74 or something like this, and Rockford Fire Department took over ambulance service. The firefighters weren't so thrilled about that,
Right,
so,
right. Because we fear change,
yeah,
or hate change, whatever you want to say.
Tradition without it, unimpeded by progress. Yeah. So anyway, so they ended up, and they took volunteers to eventually become paramedics. So this was a fledgling paramedic program at the time, and so that was all through one hospital. And so that went on, and that hospital, they just named them locally. Okay, so it's like, here, you're number 1, you're number 2, you're number 3. So by the time I became a paramedic in '88, I think it was, my number was 85. So there had been 85 or 84 paramedics in the program previous to me. So
wow, I mean.
And I actually was in the group of Rockford that got trained at the other hospital.
Yeah.
And but they still gave us those numbers.
Yeah.
It was like, we called it our Rockford number, and I don't even know what our state number is. The state number had a lot of numbers, and I didn't learn about that until I was like way late in my career.
Yeah. But that's good. I mean, so you actually know how many medics there were in the state of Illinois before you?
No. In the local program.
Right. In the local program. Yeah. Okay, I got you. In the local.
No, I was not. There was a lot of them before me. There was a lot of them before me. A lot of good ones too.
Some of the new kids.
I don't want to age you that much, right?
Yeah. I used to, when I was with Stillman Valley, in high school, and right out of high school, I'd come up and ride with Rockford. Ride along for a shift or part of a shift. And where I started riding was Station 8. There was an ambulance out of Station 8, which some people would find hard to believe now if you look at Station 8. But that's where an ambulance was running out of back then also.
Right. Yeah, that is actually hard. Well, the first ambulances were hearse. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it was actually funeral home. Well,
right.
I mean, they weren't really doing a whole lot. I mean, they were taking you to 1 or 2 places, right?
Yeah, there you go.
They would pick you up, and maybe you could go to the hospital, but they were pretty sure they could get you to the funeral home.
Yep, exactly.
I'll tell you a quick Station 8 story. They built that day room in there, and they measured all the ambulances to make sure that the ambulance wouldn't fit in there once the day room was done.
Really?
Yeah, on purpose.
So, yeah. That was the crew members did that. So.
Oh my God!
That was the story I got told more than once. So I assume it's probably clear.
So what was anyways, going back to dispatching, going back to flight, what were you enjoying from those aspects?
I don't know. I guess just again, I got to know a big part of it. I think that really helped me on the ambulance was I got to know the people in the ER.
Yeah.
I got to know the doctors. They knew my qualifications and how good I was on the street or dispatch, and you get to know them people in the ER. They're really close, and he from flying, he even closer, but I'm a door away from the actual emergency room doctors and nurses, and they were a good, really close-knit group back then. We used to have Larry parties, we called them. That was just to go out and release some stress and do some drinking. But you really got to know them people. And when I came in on an ambulance call, something serious, and the doctor, he would know my qualifications and how good or bad I was, you know what I'm saying, and take my word for it. Back then, you'd have to kind of like get on the air to request certain medications to give, and sometimes you had to really plead, but if they knew you didn't have to ask. They knew how good you were and your qualifications, and you just got the okay to do it. And that was a big part, is just the teamwork.
How crazy is it? How much they can do today in the field? What they're learning. Mm-hmm. I mean, every time I would see a new firefighter. I should say a firefighter that was being assigned to paramedic school, mm-hmm. and they would come back to the fire station and they would have their new book, and it's like
that much more.
Yeah.
When does this just? I mean, when is turn into volume 2 and they're carrying around 2-3 books? It's huge.
Yeah, and it's so funny because once I got promoted to lieutenant, I kind of gave up on my EMS career. I shouldn't say that. I remained a paramedic till I retired, but I'm sure I can remember Decadron and Pitocin and the old drugs, and now the new ones, I don't have a clue. No idea. Bertilium and all the old drugs we used to give, I can remember all that stuff.
Levofed and things.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever do the Johnny and Roy?
Oh, Rapamil, whatever it was.
For Bicar, that was Bicar.
For those of you listening or watching, that's from the show Emergency, which I think we're going to throw up a a couple of illustrations of that show. You guys ever watch? I mean, you still watch it?
Oh yeah, there's reruns.
I don't buy still, but I remember watching it when I was like,
there it is there.
Oh yeah.
So Johnny and Roy, but they did that show did a ton for pushing EMS into the fire service. Here's a little bit of background on that. So the National Registry of EMTs that was created
there they are.
in like the 1970s. Yeah, there's Johnny and Roy, and so the Los Angeles County Fire Rescue Unit was Squad 59. It officially went into service in 1969, December 8th. And that's what the show was based on. Mm-hmm. So this was actually something that LA County was doing. And there was these two medics that were, real people. Yeah. And then the producer was Jack Webb of the show and decided to make a television show called Emergency. And it first aired in 1972. And it was on the show, it was on the air for 5 years. And by the time that the show went off the air in 1977, there were paramedics in every state.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So 5 years, nothing in the fire service moves that fast. Yeah. That moves fast. That's fast.
It was. It was the right time.
Yeah. So there you go. A little bit of emergency history there, which they, so Hollywood, is it Hollywood Studios or one of the studio lots actually caught fire. And it was like one of the largest fires that they actually had in LA County, LA city history. But they actually dedicated a firehouse and a rescue company to the show, and it's on the lot.
I got to meet Johnny. I was fortunate enough to go to International Association of Firefighters medical convention. And he was there signing pictures, and I said, "Well, make one out to local 413." So I think that's still at the union office.
Is it really?
Yeah, signed.
Yeah, that's awesome.
People of our generation, that you only had 3 TV stations, so you were watching something, and that was the fun one to watch. That was exciting, and it was young, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Who carried what channel carried? Do you know? You guys know?
No, I don't know either.
Yeah.
So it was either that, or so take a guess. You'll probably
this or Cubs games, right?
Yeah.
So. Yeah, so back to so that's EMS in the fire service, right? And so dispatching for a hospital, flying for a hospital, that's a ton of EMS. Yeah. Did you guys ever feel like you just were always doing this, whether you were at the firehouse or you were at the hospital or you were in the helicopter, were you guys just always
Marc
in
said,
this?
It was fun. That was the thing, is you were enjoying yourself. So I had always wanted to fly. When I was talking about the military, I was talking about flying. I went and got my pilot's license and everything else, kind of stuff. And so they had one helicopter in town, and the second helicopter was starting up, and it was basically starting up the same time I was going through paramedic class. And a couple of our guys on the fire department, they were paramedics on there as well. And I said, that looks like that'd be fun. I get to fly. It's about flying.
Yeah.
And so I enjoyed paramedic stuff, and enjoyed doing it and everything like that. And so eventually I was able to get a job on that helicopter, and they wanted, at the time, being a startup service possibly, because they flew with one nurse and one paramedic as a crew. And one of the reasons they wanted the paramedic was because a lot of the nurses that were there didn't have previous flight experience. And so they liked the idea of a paramedic from a busy department that had a lot of experience coming out there and, sort of being able to fill in those gaps of an emergency.
Working in the field. They're used to working under good lighting and air conditioning and heating, and we're not. And
they were brilliant. They really were, but they didn't intubate people that were laying on the ground, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so they liked the idea of having somebody, hey, you know what, stay out of that area because that's, like downwind or whatever the story is, that kind of stuff. So that was the way they originally set it up, was they wanted one nurse, one paramedic flying together, kind of stuff.
Okay.
So that gave an avenue for paramedics to get on the job.
Yeah, right.
And so it fit. They knew that paramedics were all full-time firefighters, so that meant that, the shifts were, capable of being, the right kind of shift, And so, for I think I was there for 6 or 7 years, and I got to fly and, work with some fantastic people. And because it was a small group of people, your paramedic license is really one of those flexible things. So in other words, you're under a program, you're under their protocol. But when I flew with the helicopter, I was in a very different protocol than when I worked for the fire department.
Sure. And so I bet you had no problem getting CEUs, though.
No problem at all. You needed them for both places, And but a lot of the things that the paramedics are doing today are things that we were doing on the helicopter back then because we were a small group.
Sure.
And by us being a small group, the PMDs of the different areas could come in and say, okay, we only have 12 of you people. We're going to teach you how to do a chest tube, or we're going to teach you how to do open thoracotomies, or whatever the story is, and we trust you in doing that. That's hard to do when you have 1,000 paramedics out there in the same program, kind of stuff.
Did helicopter program? Are you saying did helicopter programs help pave the way for paramedics in the field today to be able to do more
absolutely.
and more? Yeah.
RSI. We did RSI all the time, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And now it's a routine thing, medications like ketamine and things like that. We use those, we carried those things, a lot of advanced stuff that we did there. In our program, actually, we did pediatrics. We did preterm labor, we did maternal fetal medicine, as well as like trauma and cardiac and all the regular ones. But so we had a lot of training in those areas. And again, as they developed in this area, because everything's regional, it doesn't always work when you're trying to grab something from one coast to another, then people got more comfortable with it. The PMDs got more comfortable with it. The level of this is useful, but it's not out of our range of being safe, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All evolved. And then again, nationally registered. We were all nationally registered because that was kind of part of the program. National registry at the time was more of it's just like an oddity, I think.
Yeah.
But I think that when Pro Board and National Registry all started becoming something that was adopted by more communities, the military, all these other things, that became a more robust program, which again, like, hey, they're doing RSI over here. Why can't we do it here? There's a reason, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that the whole thing, again, Johnny and Roy were only, 1969?
Yeah.
It's not that old of a service. So
yeah,
a lot of evolution.
Yeah, tons, right? And so much of it came from just, seeing the tragedies that were happening in America, going all the way back to, the white paper, the death and dying in America on our, which bore the National Traffic Safety Board and so many things that came out of EMS, right? I mean, the fire service, the firefighting gets so much front and center attention, but yet it is in the EMS where people are living,
look at the
being
last
saved.
25 years of the military and what that's done for trauma.
I mean,
when we first started out, even in Boy Scouts, don't ever a tourniquet. You put that on for life or limb. You never use that. They're going to lose their leg if you put a tourniquet on, kind of thing.
Right.
And now it's an accepted practice for the right reasons.
Right.
So it's just what they've learned in the military for trauma. Sad situation that they learned it, but boy, did they learn well.
Right.
Well, so if you go back, so I do do some homework as I try to put these things together, and so you can actually go back to the Civil War in our country here. And you can actually really go back all the way to Roman times. I mean, it was actually there was knights that were together that were actually kind of like the first responders, if you will. But the Civil War really brought out the idea that we can't just have people, because so many soldiers were not necessarily critically wounded, or they were critically wounded, they were not killed, essentially, that the weapons were not so advanced that you would just immediately die.
Yeah.
So you had so many injuries, and you had to have a system that you could collect, human beings and bring them to a place where they would get some kind of, medical treatment. And then again, to your point, now you can just fast forward through the years and, what have we learned from, at least something's come out of the wars that have been fought,
right.
Which is a huge part of the medical aspect, and especially in the field.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Charles remembered, the emergency, we were carrying in the little white box and the TV tube, the medical kit, the Life Pack 5, and it was such a big deal. We went to the 10, and but we were doing the exact same things they were doing back when we started.
747 kit.
Yeah, that was
yeah, I had that. That's where I get to participate with you guys. I was like, well, I know the orange and white tackle box. I had the same thing.
Yep.
So,
the ambulance would have an inventory, but then there would be like about 100 things more than the inventory. Oh, you got to have 5 of these things just in case. And we carried like NG tubes. But like NG tube, so one that goes through your nose into your belly, right?
Yeah.
It was like, why are we carrying this in the ambulance? I think they finally got rid of it at one point in time, but it's like, but we had to certify on it. We had to know how to, somebody thought it was a good idea. So
well, then the state had their own requirements too.
You had
to have the state equipment on there.
Yeah.
So
when you guys were doing those, various, you were dispatching, you're flying, were you guys thought of as like when you were coming back to the firehouse that you just had so much more experience than the average firefighter?
I don't think so.
Does that make sense?
I don't think so, but I also knew who the flight medics were, and you could go to them for maybe a little extra.
Yeah.
If you're questioning yourself,
You didn't really know that any more than you knew the guys that were carpenters or plumbers or whatever kind of stuff. It was like, you didn't go, oh my gosh, he's one of those. It was like, no, because he's another tool in the box.
Yeah, because there's nurses out there that they're in the fire service, right? They do nursing, and then they're in the fires. I mean,
we had some that came on the job,
and we had two flight programs, on each side of town. We had a lot
of medics.
That's where I was getting at. Yeah, and I think just they had a little more knowledge and experience that you could just ask them a little question.
Yeah,
but the caliber of paramedics in the Rockford Fire Department is always been very high, at least in our time frame for sure. It's been very high, very well respected at the hospitals to the point that they would say, we know we're dealing with you guys versus, a department that has a few runs that, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so, we weren't special as far as things go because we had so many great people that we were just one of them,
Well, they're definitely tested. So. We've said that before is that, and hats off to everybody out there in America that's out there doing this job and working in some of the hardest, toughest areas. And this area was sort of that, you could really get baptized by a fire here, and end up being a great firefighter, a great paramedic. So, that's been awesome.
It was always the people. That was the bottom line, is at the end of the day, it was because there wasn't some one guy that led everybody. It was like, no, you're in charge today, and I work next to you, and tomorrow I'm in charge, and you work next to me. And the quality of the people was so fantastic that, it was across the board.
Yeah.
I give a lot of kudos to the volunteer departments that are farther away.
Yeah.
We're lucky. We're 5 minutes from 3 level 1 hospitals at one time. Yeah. Some guys are coming 40, 45 minutes. They got to know how to do the drips.
Yeah.
We didn't do a drip very often.
Yeah, exactly.
And
5 minutes.
And they were sitting alongside us in the same class. They had the same training we had. Sometimes they got knocked a little bit, which they shouldn't have, because they're doing the same training, the same,
and they don't get to use
number
it as often.
Exactly. So you give them a lot of credit because they're. I don't know if they're better medics,
accidents,
but high speed.
We had accidents here, but not some of those high speed multiple car accidents that they would have in the rural areas.
Right.
And those guys, extrication skills and management tools, and you couldn't take anything away from it. It was just
I'm always fascinated by those regions of the country where medics are out there keeping people alive for a very long, extended transport,
Quick story. This spring we went to, we were down in Smoky Mountain National Park, and we're just taking a little 3-mile hike back into a waterfall, right? And we start getting, a couple of people going, but don't go down there. Somebody's having a medical emergency, this and that kind of thing. And so as we're going down there, here comes this guy running by, and is uphill the whole shot.
Yeah.
And he's got a big backpack on, a yellow shirt on, and he's some kind of a responder, going up there. And everybody's saying, don't turn around. They're turning around, everybody around. It's like, man, if this guy's doing CPR on this guy, I'm going up to help him, kind of
Sure.
stuff. So I went up there, and then eventually here comes a ranger up there, this kind of stuff. I mean, they were working this guy for 45 minutes, and that was on the trail. They still had to get them all the way back down the trail, So you talk about a different environment than grab them, throw them in the ambulance, and we'll be at the hospital in 5 minutes. And just that whole other environment that there's so many places that are so different,
Yeah. So we're gonna switch here to I just want to touch on something because you both were a part of that system, and I was able to at least contribute a little bit of help when we lost the REAC helicopter crew, and we're coming up on the anniversary. How did you guys deal with all that? Were you guys still a part of the system when we lost the REAC crew?
Yeah,
which we have a little. I just want to give a bit of a tribute to them, and we have the anniversary in December coming up, and I know it affected this community, and there so many people knew the people on the flight.
It was tough times. I'll be honest with you, and I know how close Charles was with one of them crew members, skiing a lot and doing a lot off duty, and with family stuff. It was tough for the program. It took a long time for them to get back and where they are nowadays, and that's a tough loss for anything. It was a tough loss for the community. It was a tough loss for the down south of here where it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, and then also they just think in October a crew of a helicopter was lost in Kentucky, I believe. So it happens.
It happens probably more than you think. Unless you see, you get the paper every day.
Yeah.
But being part of the flight crew, they would get notified.
Yeah.
When a ship went down, or whether it was a tragic or it was just a hard landing, a soft landing, whatever they called it back then. And and you guys were trained on them type of landings. But that tragedy was tough for everybody.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I was not flying at the time. I had stopped, but I was good friends with one of the people on the crew. And it was about midnight, I think it was. And first person I called was Marc. Are you working? Kind of thing, in the dispatch center.
Yeah.
And he said he wasn't working, but he told me what he knew. And it was a really big deal. I mean, I was in the middle of the night at the station, and I called up a guy and said, "Can you come in and work for me?"
Yeah.
And went to be with a family. That's because it was that close.
Yeah.
And the waiting to find out what was going on, the official words and all that kind of stuff, and then the community outcry afterwards, or not outcry, I should say, the community support.
Yeah. Support,
is the wrong word. Then that was for a week or two, I think it was, and it was just something after something after something, and then these people were the same kind of family, and that your fire department family is, and in this particular case, it was actually somebody who was closer than my family, or than most of my fire department family. But the issue is it's like there was really the Rockford Fire Department, the other communities. They said we're treating them like a line of duty death, because even though it was a different line of duty, they still see them as responders. And I think that was really big. The spouse of one of the people said, they said, "Well, do you want this or not?" And he says, "I want it so my kids will see what their parent was."
Absolutely.
Kind of thing. And that kind of support from the community was really appreciated at the time.
Yeah. I was able to just, lend effort and help to the system, and also to the departments organizing the memorial. And getting things orchestrated there at Rock Valley College, and what a tremendous, turnout that we had. And we just wanted to, because again, I know your guys' background, you guys know mine, and there's respect there that those out there that are flying, that are on ambulances, you have just as much risk out there as anybody. And so, our hats go off to anybody out there, and we always want to recognize and remember those that we've lost.
Sure.
So I just wanted to, make sure we were able to do that together. I'm going to switch to a little fun thing we like to do.
Oh boy!
And I do know you said you're like no tests.
I'm not going to be no hazmat guru like Kyle.
So we are going to switch to a segment here, but it's going to be fun. So this is a Family Feud Firefighter Edition. So this is Family Feud Firefighter Edition. I don't think there's anything. All you got to do is just chime into what you think might have been one of the top three answers to the questions that I asked to 15 firefighters. I surveyed 15 firefighters. I know that's not a huge pool, but it gave me enough.
Wait, who were they? We can probably answer the questions a lot easier if we know.
Ooh, that's a good point. Yeah. No, so it's not a big pool, but it will get us where we want to go and have a little bit of fun. So 15 firefighters were surveyed to get the top three answers to the following questions. You guys ready?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So question one. Question one was, all you got to do is just shout, just say what you think might have been one of the top three. So question one, how do you spot a firefighter off the job?
Apparel.
Yep, that's what I was going to say. Wearing a shirt.
Okay, apparel.
Or a hat or a spot on his truck.
Okay, what's that?
Oh, a sticker on his truck.
A sticker on the truck, apparel.
Yeah. License plate.
License plate,
yeah.
Okay, all right, okay. Anything else? Okay, you ready?
Or you're probably doing something with him. This was we all have the same schedule, so we end up doing the same stuff together.
So we're in the ballpark. So we got the sticker, we got the apparel, things of that nature. The number one answer was driving a pickup truck, pulling a boat with a sticker in the window, and the sticker reads, "My other vehicle is a fire truck." That was the number one.
I will say that a high percentage of firefighters are driving pickups.
Oh yeah,
newer ones.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I taught my family, hey, if you see that union sticker, you can probably trust that guy. So.
Number two was number two answer to question one was never pulls forward into a parking spot, is always backing up.
Well, I know 3 pickups outside here that are backed in.
Yeah, always, right? You might have to get out the door, right?
Yeah.
And number 3 to question 1, the third answer was he's at a bar telling everyone that he's a firefighter.
Yeah, there you go. That's for sure. Yep.
Good answers.
Yeah, good answer. So we got
5 minutes. What do you do? Well,
yeah. Well, let me tell you. Have you seen my tattoos? All right. So we got the sticker in the window. That was good. Okay. Question number 2. How many nurses on average does a firefighter date before they figure out that a firefighter and nurse relationship is not going to work out?
3.
Okay. 3. We got 3.
I don't know. I married mine, and then she became a nurse.
Okay. Good enough. All right. Well, we got 3 in there. The top answer was 5.
Wow.
5.
Wow.
3 was number 2, and 2 was the third answer. So, I think there's something to be learned there, right? All right. Question 3. What are the top 3 excuses for calling off work after the Christmas holiday party?
Oh, there's so many answers. I'm in jail.
I'm in jail.
They're all good as long as you use your sick voice.
Yeah.
You guys, you have to use the sick voice, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, my side hurts.
Yeah.
I might stub my toe.
Yeah,
what are you talking like that for? We've all heard them.
We've heard them.
We always rated them. It's like, you got a really good sick voice. Now what's going on?
Yeah, we had a chief that I would relieve, and he would relieve me. So then he'd come in and he'd go, "Well, it's time for me to go down and see who wins the Oscar."
Yeah, I can believe it.
Yep. That's about it too.
Okay, so top answer was my kid is sick. So this is the next morning after
we couldn't do
we
that.
couldn't do
this
that
is the
back
Christmas.
then.
Yeah. So my kid is sick. Number 2, I must have eaten something bad last night. And number 3, my vision is blurry. Can't see myself coming to work today.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, we're doing pretty good. Number 4, what are the top 3 excuses for backing the ambulance into the overhead garage door? Top 3 excuses given as to why did you back the ambulance into the overhead garage door?
I'm going to say something that'll probably piss off a couple higher chiefs, but my philosophy from day one as an officer or as a chief, and it goes back to people who have problems. They come in the station with problems, personal problems. We've all had them. And so they back into the door, and the whatever chief wants you to go chew their ass out. And I'm like, you think they came in today and said, I'm going to back into the door. I want to hit the door because I want to do paperwork, and I want to get criticized for everything. My philosophy, we have bad days.
Yeah.
Things happen. It's called an accident. Nobody gets hurt. To me, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
The price of doing business.
Exactly. People have bad days. Things happen.
And back in the day, it was the radio, keyed the radio and that made the door go.
Right.
And everybody said it was impossible.
Yeah.
Couldn't happen, right? True story. Okay.
Yeah.
Old Station 11, we were having that problem. And one door, we used to have all glass doors. Mm-hmm. The whole door was glass. And one door was already gone because of it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
We were running out of a different door, and I was actually on the ambulance at night. We all knew you do not key that radio when you're underneath that door for sure.
Yeah.
And we had a guy got shipped in. The dispatcher gave us the address. My partner replied. Yep. It was the wrong address. The dispatcher corrected it. My partner, instead of picking it up, because I was like wait, he just pushed the button right down on top of us. We were halfway out.
Yeah.
And it came right down glass everywhere.
Yep.
So the thing is that was our number one excuse was keyed the radio, but it's true. It actually happens.
Yeah. So. I lucked out. I never got into, I don't think I did. I don't think I got into any accidents. So that was okay. No, actually darn it. Not the one that I would cause. I was actually a district chief. I was responding to a fire and I got sideswiped at 15th and Broadway.
Yeah.
So I did, but okay. Well, the top
sun's in your eyes.
Yeah, sun's in my eyes. Yeah. Top answer for question 4: why did you back into the ambulance garage door? I don't know what happened. The door just activated.
Exactly. There you go.
Top answer was my partner was out, but the radio didn't transmit. Number 3, or answer to The third answer was the garage door company was just out working on it. They must have done something and screwed it up.
Good, as long as you have an answer.
Yep. So, okay, question five. There's 6 questions. Question 5, what are the top 3 excuses that a rookie firefighter gives to a veteran firefighter for not knowing how to pull the fire hose off the fire truck properly?
That's not the way they taught us in the academy.
Nobody showed us.
Okay. All right. We're doing pretty good. Okay. Number 1, what did you say?
That's not the way they taught us in the academy.
Number 1, they didn't teach us that in the academy.
Exactly.
Number 2 was I thought you wanted the other guy to do it.
Pass the buck.
The guy with the white shirt over there, right?
Right. And the third was let's see you do it better.
I know who probably said that.
Yeah. That's funny.
All right, we'll finish this up. Question 6 of the Family Feud Firefighter Edition. What are the top 3 reasons for a firefighter that sleeps through a call?
I didn't hear the tone.
Yeah.
I didn't hear the tone. Okay. Anything else?
I don't know. I can't think of anything except for, I went to bed later. I just came back from a run. I was tired.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Okay. The top one, I'm a really heavy sleeper. My mom can't even wake me up. The second one was I was shipped out. This isn't my my normal firehouse.
Didn't recognize it.
Yeah.
And the third, the
tone there, right?
Yeah. Right. It's different, right? And the third one, I thought it was for the ambulance.
Yeah, there you go.
That was good.
Yep.
Thanks for playing. This is Family Feud Firefighter Edition. We might bring that one back. That was a lot of fun. A couple of things, guys, as we start to kind of draw down here, one of the things that we do at Original Firefighters, we talk about what are you doing with your off days? And obviously with retirement, they're all your off days if you want them to be. But what are you guys, what are you guys into now? What is your passion today? Because I know we all miss it there's fire in our belly, if you will.
Yeah.
So, but what are you doing with your time nowadays?
I have a dog now. That's a big part of my life right now. So she's with me every second. But from the job, I got some back issues. I got a torn MCL right now. I used to play a lot of golf. I still do a little bit, but not that much. Some yard work, do stuff with my son. I try and travel. I still cook a lot.
Yeah.
I do a lot of walking when I can with my knees good. I enjoy walking, and I do yard work when I feel like it. If it's gonna, you always had to work around your schedule or the weather before.
Get this done,
Now it's like it'll be there tomorrow or the next day.
I think it's interesting you both found ways, again, going back to being trustees.
Well, I was going to say that's part of it too. I don't get in the operations part of it. That's not my deal anymore, even though I'd like to once in a while give my opinion. And, we have a very good chief down where we're at, and he does an outstanding job. He happens to be the president of the Illinois Fire Chiefs right now. But that keeps me active enough in the fire department.
How about you, Charles? What's going on in your off days?
I'm a highway commissioner for my township. So that keeps me busy on itself. I've got some other stuff that I do for some people as far as just work goes. And I had an old house.
Still working on it? Still tinkering with it?
It's an old house and just, working on one part or another part,
Yeah.
I joke with my poor wife, I joke with her. I said, it sits far enough off the road that nobody else can see it. So I don't have to worry about the neighbors, kind of thing.
Sure.
The problem is it sits so far off the road, it's not important to get it done, kind
right.
of thing. So, but yeah, just traveling and, just enjoying things.
You probably look forward to this winter coming up, don't you? Getting out there plowing.
Plowing, yeah. So
are you still doing that?
Yeah, that's the highway commissioner's job. You know? And so I'm still a highway commissioner for now. And
are you?
I got
that's for Owen Center, right?
Owen Township. Yeah.
Owen Township.
And
okay.
A lot of people call it Owen Center. And then I'm fortunate I can do it because we have firefighters that'll come and plow for us.
Yeah.
It's the same old thing. It's like, hey, can I get these guys? Yeah, you know what? I can trust them. They know what they're doing. They're honest. Somebody, I accidentally hit a mailbox. Hey, at least they told me, and I'm not waiting for a phone call. We can get out there and take care of it. Kind of stuff. So just that's one of those things that keeps me busy right there. But not what we used to do. I'm not getting up at 5 a.m. and going till 11 every night anymore. It's like, I'll sleep in until 7, and but maybe knock off at 8 o'clock or something like that.
Yeah.
So
well, I'm going to give you guys, both, my own little round of applause, which is, you guys have both found a way to give back still. Like you're still giving back, which is great. I mean, we need that experience from, the older days, if you will. But you're showing other people, the younger generations that, this job is not about just clocking in and serving a shift and then, hey, it can be that way. If that's the way you go about it, we're not putting that down. But there's certain, aspects of in certain people that it's just in your DNA and you're giving back. And then when you're not working your first job, it's like you're still giving back in some way. And then with you guys retired, you guys have found another way to just keep giving back. And I just think that that's great.
And to you too, appreciate what you're doing,
Yeah.
If I were to ask, because I can't miss this moment, if you were to give advice to the newest of new firefighters walking on the job right now, what would you give them? What would be the advice you'd say?
Well, like they tell you in academy, listen and learn. And, I try and stop out there once in a while when a new class is going on. There's a new class now and of course, Rebecca or somebody say, come in and talk to the guys, and I say, have fun. Know your job, but have fun. It's serious. The risks are there, but it's rewarding. It's a rewarding career. And a really good EMS call is as challenging as a really good fire. When you got to do your training and you save a life, and I was lucky enough to deliver 5 babies, just have fun with it. It's tough, but it's rewarding, and it's the challenges are there. And like we've talked about before, if you got any issues or any problems, just go talk to somebody.
No, absolutely.
And just enjoy life, and I think that's what I tell almost any young person, but I think it goes more so with firefighters, because the one thing I've always recognized with firefighters is they understand that, the world is, can be a bad, hostile place, and you're not going to get out of it. You're not going to get out of it alive.
Yeah.
And, but more importantly, it's like appreciate life, I mean, that you realize that it's like, no, I have today. Go enjoy today.
Yeah.
And if today means that I'm going to go, go out golfing or, take the boat out fishing, or I'm going to go mow the lawn and just relax and put something on the barbecue or whatever the story is, it's like enjoy today. And I think that firefighters they emulate that more than most people.
Well, it has been a great storytelling session to a degree, and we love it here. We love it here, and a couple things, from flight medic to dispatcher to chief officers, firefighters, all the things you do, trustees and, road commissioner. There's a lot of great experience in the room here today, and I've enjoyed all of our time together. One of the things that I want to make sure we always let our listeners know that if you have a story, if you want to come on our show, you can reach out to info@originalfirefighter.com, info@originalfirefighter.com. Don't forget that we have merchandise at our store, originalfirefighter.com. And I just want to thank my guests today, Marc Wortman, Charles Barnes. You guys have given me a great tutorial and a way of walking back in time a little bit and getting back to where we're at today, which is a great discussion. Remember, we've talked about this on this show and any others, that if you are struggling out there, if you have anything inside of your head or your heart that just isn't matching up, you can reach out to people that are listening and will care for the needs that you may have. We just want to also really quickly just let you know, we have Richie Macias in our hearts and the Macias family, and also Joe Cascio and the Cascio family in our hearts. We wish you all the best, and we're thinking about you. Guys, thanks for being on the show. This has been the Original Firefighter Podcast. Be safe.